I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Sydney, Australia. He works as a solution architect at Link Housing. In 2021, he won the Power Housing Award for Excellence in Customer Service and Business Support. I'd like to welcome to the show, Adam Cunningham.
Thanks, Mark. Pleasure being on.
Good to have you on the show. I always like to hear these stories of where the Power Platform's been used in the field without, Microsoft's interpretation of it or without a Microsoft's partner's story behind it, but really hearing what your story is. But before we jump in there, can you tell me a bit about what you do when you're not working? What does food, family, and fun, what do they mean to you?
Look, I think much like everyone else, I've got a young son, not so young now, 8. Most of everything I do tends to revolve around him. These days, kids, sports, schoolwork, doesn't leave much time for something else, like a bit of basketball, do some lifting and boxing and what have you. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. And tell me then, how did you, what's your origin story? How did you get into this career of technology?
Look, I was operational, frontline housing management, working homeless and youth services. Gradually just, through doing different projects, I was doing renovations, a whole bunch of different stuff. And then, the CEO that we had at the time was like, oh, you're going to manage our new system. We're putting in a new system. You're going to manage it. And I didn't know anything at all about IT, really. And it went from there.
So what was the new system that got put in?
It was Tech One.
Technology
One.
Okay,
which is a rather fully fledged ERP style.
Yeah, used in a lot of
solution.
Councils right around Australia.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. It's not been so popular in the housing scene. It's extremely flexible, but it's interesting to keep track of and do all your work in there and everything else. Yeah, it's an ERP. It's not a housing solution.
Right. So then, how did you transition into the Power Platform?
Look, I went around, spent some time at other orgs, did a whole bunch of other consulting work, and then I came back to another technology like Finance One user and was working with them. And then Link Housing approached me and asked me to come over and said they were looking at integrating some new systems and everything else. I was like, sure. And so we worked on some of their older systems, moving them from older style on-prem, based up like totally, desktop-based applications to more modern cloud-based solutions, etc. And then, we were having a look around, and our major core system is a little bit limited in that space. It's lacking flexibility. It's an old, C++ app. Now it's been rewritten into .NET. Our options to do anything with it were quite limited. And I was mucking around with some Microsoft stuff. I was already quite familiar with Power BI. I was using Power BI for a lot of our integrations. When I came to Link, we were really only using Microsoft Excel as our main reporting tool. And so I brought in Power BI, and then it sort of just went from there. Yeah.
Tell me about that change from using Excel for your reporting to going to Power BI. What was the kind of feedback you got from people that were, being provided with the reports, the dashboards, things like that?
Well, look, Link basically went from having our reports done once a week manually by the reporting analyst in Excel to having lifetime reporting in front of them on their phones, mobile devices, iPads, however they wanted it, they could get it. And so for them, it was quite an eye-opener, and they didn't realize that it could be done as easily. I mean, obviously it's not totally easily, but they couldn't believe how quickly it was able to be done and implemented, and also the results that they were getting. We had improvements across the board in basically every area that BI touched. Everything from, vacancy processes to arrears to everything. I mean, when you can see the data, and even the end users can see the data and what's happening and where they're at in, amongst their own patches, it sort of makes the whole thing bring in, a continual improvement.
Interesting. And so then the transition into the other power technologies?
Well, COVID. Basically, it was COVID. Like I said, we were working on older systems, quite inflexible. All of our workforce went home with our first lockdown, and we were caught a little bit unawares. And so in 2 weeks, I'd rolled out I went from monkeying around with the Powerapps to rolling out my first Powerapps in all of about 3 weeks, literally. And so just because we had to do something. Our options for working at home were quite limited. We were working off remote desktop, all that sort of thing.
Wow, yeah.
And so, look, we had to get it up and running in a quick. Powerapps came along, and it was history, I guess, from there.
Wow.
Now we have 5 or 6 applications now in use throughout the organization. There's definitely seems to be a taste for more.
Yeah. So do you have, when you say 5 or 6, are they kind of like, critical to how your organization runs, or are they more support type functions?
Look, a mixture of both. We started off with support type functions where our systems weren't capturing, or was like the process to capture the data was very convoluted, very slow, very manual. And we were able to, like the first app that we brought in was purely just a data capture tool, but it allowed integration with the system and everything else. And it was so much easier than using the actual system. And then it went on from there. Now we actually have our maintenance processes being run on a Powerapp, it's basically a $10 million a year business being run on the Powerapp itself with some integration back into our finance. So we've got a mixture from, just key functions that our system doesn't support to whole business units running their business on it.
So you obviously spearheaded this. Have you grown more of a team around you? Have you brought in, is there other folks that have started now getting involved within your organization? Like said, hey, this Powerup stuff's cool. Can I have an app for me? And you've said, hey, go build it yourself. Like, here's the tools, go build it.
I wish that would happen. At this stage, everyone wants an app. They don't seem confident to jump in and give it a try. We have, we didn't even have Flow widespread use. And so I've got some of the business units and some of the more technical stuff. I've taught them how to use Flow just for some simple stuff and showed them what they can do with it. And so Flow definitely is being used out in the business. Powerapps, not so much. Everyone seems a little bit apprehensive still to touch it.
Okay.
But everyone definitely, I think I'm sitting on a list of 5 or 6 apps that people want at the moment. And so, so Powerapps, they seem a bit apprehensive about, I think just because they look at it, it's little bit technical, you know what I mean? And that worries them a little bit. And so they get a bit scared. And I tell them not to worry. I'll show you. It's fine. We've had some other people in my team start to dabble in it. But out in the business, not so much. Flow out in the business is actually quite well received. Right. And they're using it for some operational stuff. Definitely some of the more technical users are using it for workflow management almost. And so, it's been a transformative process.
What's been, from the business stakeholders' perspective, what's their perception now of, do they call it the Power Platform? What do they refer to it? Do you have your own naming systems for it?
No, they just basically refer to the apps as the apps separately, Powerapps, and then they really don't refer to it as a Power Platform. I've noticed amongst our team, because we've got a BI team now, we tend to refer to it as such.
Yep.
The business just refer to them as the apps.
Yeah.
That's basic. They don't want to know what's there. They just, use them.
I'm interested. What's your experience been from a licensing perspective? Like, what journey have you gone on? Because we've seen the pricing of the licensing drop. We've seen, I don't know whether you started out with a per app license, and then do you get to a critical point where you go, you know what, we've got more apps. It's cheaper to actually go, the full consumption model. What was your journey for that?
Well, look, as a nonprofit, we were quite lucky because our per user price was very affordable. And so we worked that into our costings. So we actually just went the per user price from the beginning.
Right.
Only because we were a nonprofit. And so if we did not get the nonprofit pricing, it would have changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
We would have had to be really selective in what we were doing and everything else. But with the nonprofit pricing, it just enables us to, all operational stuff, we give it to them, and then we just work it out later. Because we're only looking at $2,000 or $3,000 across a whole organization for like 100 licenses per year. So it's really affordable compared to anything else that's out there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, look, it was at first, there was even just getting concrete information from licensing from our technology supplier was a challenge. And so then I basically just ended up having to go and dig through everything myself and read it and research. And I think in hindsight, I found out they actually have a course. Microsoft offer a course in their licensing, which
yeah, that's no surprise there, right?
Yeah, I found that out in hindsight though, after spending numerous hours researching and seeing how it all puts together, and it would have been handy. But look, it's good that I think it's really good that with the latest changes, I think it's simplified it. It's made it more, much more easy to understand and everything else. Yeah, at first I found it really not difficult, just some challenges in around, okay, is this connected premium? Is this this? Is this that? What would have bumped my app up to, And so when they made those changes, it definitely made it a lot easier.
Yeah. So when you're looking at road mapping for the future, what does your backlog look like? Are they massively complex apps? Are they simple apps? Are you using the Powerapps Portal at all?
Look, I just believe the Powerapps Portal changed. We did explore it earlier on in the piece, and the price, it was quite expensive. And so there were cheaper options. But now with the new vision and prices, I'm going to go back and look at that. At this stage, no, because we've just got a bit of a backlog on the apps that the business wants. And so we've asked them to prioritize it, because we want to go through a proper development cycle, full testing, have replicating test and prod environments and everything else. And so it takes a little bit longer, but it provides surety for the business and for like us that need to support it, that it's all doing what it should be. You know what I mean? Powerapps Portal is definitely something I'm interested in personally. I don't think we're going to look at that so much from our organization standpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think there's a lot of room to move there. At first, I thought it was a little bit expensive for what was on offer. But again, Microsoft, as they've been doing over the past, 2 to 3 years, have consistently been going back and looking at that and bringing the pricing down from what I can tell.
Yeah, well, scale, right? You got so many people on it, you can, economies of scale. What about your deployment model? Are you mainly deploying your apps inside of Teams, or are you deploying out to iOS, Android, that type of thing?
Look, most of our staff actually have access to iPads, iPhones, and obviously their laptops. So we use a combination. We do deploy them out to the iOS side of it, apps, because that's what we use in the organization.
Right,
some of the staff have worked out that, I can access this on my Android devices, and they're using Android as well, which came up with some interesting things, like i.e. Android, depending on the version of Android they were doing, it was no matter how you would code $signs, it would translate them in. For all my UK-based staff who had Android devices, it would put the pound over the top. Wow. And it was doing that at the OS level. And so it took me ages to work out a way to get around that one. And so, so we've got a combination. Most of them actually tend to use them via the web interface.
Yep. Wow.
So powerapps.com. And that's how the majority of them are being used, except for there's a handful that, for instance, the maintenance app, which is fully on the iPad form factor. And basically all the technical staff use that, iPads and computer. So on their PCs and laptops as well.
Yeah. So what are the lessons learned? You've got a bit of history behind you now and building out. What are the lessons learned, and what would your advice be to let's go just even in the non-for-profit space, what would your advice be to them?
Look, I think it's such a powerful tool. I don't think it's quite recognized what you can actually do with it yet. It's been such a journey. Like, I look back at some of the first programs I've done, and Microsoft itself has developed Powerapps so much. Like, some of the things I had to go all the way around the merry-go-round, so to speak, are now built-in functions, which is really nice. I really like the fact that Microsoft has continued to develop it. I also like the fact that it seems like they have been listening to some of that user voice stuff that users have been reporting. And it's looking so much more robust now than what it did even 18 months ago. I think Powerapps itself is actually, it's become a lot more robust, a lot more user-friendly. Also, as the documentation and knowledge of it's increased, it's really made things a lot easier. I mean, I think now I'm rolling out, my proof of concepts in 2 or 3 weeks. And that's not 2 or 3 weeks of work. That's from the beginning, the project starting. And then you reconvene in 3 or 4 weeks. And that's, you'll have your proof of concept out. And that's, you haven't spent 3 or 4 weeks on that straight. That's just in elapsed time because you're working on other things. And it just enables that beginning part to be done so quickly.
Yeah. So in hindsight, what would have, if you were to do it today, starting from scratch, knowing all you know, what would you do differently? Or what would you do the same?
Oh, look, I look back now, and just with everything that's changing, I am just like, I want to go back and rewrite all my apps just because of all the new stuff that Microsoft's brought in. There's so much more easier ways of going about it. So, look, I would suggest, when I started, it was difficult to find a user guide documentation around, Powerapps tutorials, in essence. It was really difficult finding all that. And so I would suggest do as much research as you can and just look at Powerapps in itself and what different people are doing and how they're doing about it, and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a versatile tool,
What are your top resources? As in that you'll go to if you've got someone in your organization that says, "Hey, I need to get up to speed." What are the URLs you email to them to get them to take a look at?
Normally it's Shane Young's YouTube.
Nice.
Or the Microsoft. Microsoft have actually, over the last year, the Powerapps Portal, and you know how you've got Microsoft.learn.
Yep.
They've expanded that so much, which I wish was around before I started looking at it. Because I look at it now and I'm like, oh, this is so nice. Well, before they pretty much just had a forum,
Yeah.
And so them themselves have been, with the work that they've been doing, it's been really good. And so I send them basically to those two places. Yeah, I find Shane Young's stuff good. Also, Reza Durrani, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember his surname.
Reza's been doing a lot of great stuff.
Yeah,
totally.
I watch his releases religiously. I found his stuff to be really good. And Shane Young's, I think Shane Young's quite popular in this space.
Yeah, definitely. Have you
I
had
think
a
everyone
chance
knows who Chewy is.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to connect with the community in Australia, and other organizations that are doing the same type of thing, the Powerapps?
Yeah, we used to have a meetup. Obviously, COVID, the lockdowns that we've had over here have contributed to that. I can't seem to bring myself into the habit of going to those things via the web. I like the old school face-to-face. Yeah, I like the old school in-person meetups. And so I think they're up next month, which I'm hoping. Look, I found some really interesting people that were talking about their use cases. Microsoft were having a monthly meeting at their Reactor site in Sydney.
Yep.
There were some people that worked there and attended that were just so easy to deal with. And you could see everyone just loved learning about it. It was a really good vibe.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed those myself. Yeah, I would suggest getting to those meetups as well. That's where I met a lot of people, and it sort of just opened my eyes to oh, I can do more with this than what I thought.
Yeah.
Although some people think that, to quote a friend of mine, Powerapps is the new Excel. So, yeah.
Yeah, some people are saying it's the new SharePoint. It's, SharePoint back in the day, you could do anything with it. And, of course, Access is the other one that Microsoft has in its history. Adam, before I let you go, is any closing remarks?
Look, it's more just, it's come so far. I'm curious to see what it's going to be like in 2 or 3 years from now. You look at the progress that's been made just over the last 12 months, and I am just looking forward to the future, what's going to be next?
Yeah.
And it's going to be really good to see what Microsoft do with this moving forward into the future.
Adam, thanks so much for coming on the show.
No problems. Thank you, Mark.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.